here's the thing. They're absolutely terrified of XRP. And yeah, I'm talking about Swift. They just keep taking shots at Ripple and XRP over and over again. But here's what's really interesting. I honestly feel like this whole thing is just one massive diversion tactic. It's like they're trying to get us to lose focus on XRP, hoping we'll just give up on it, or forget why we believed in it in the first place. They want us distracted, plain and simple. And you know what? This is the biggest red flag you'll see with any major innovation throughout history. Whenever something truly disruptive comes along, there's always so much noise, so much chaos, that it distracts everyone. Market participants, retail investors, everyday people, everyone gets pulled in different directions. And now, we're watching it happen right in front of us at the most basic level. So check this out. Swift's chief innovation officer actually posted this on X. He said, and I quote, "Calling a private token a bridge currency, I wonder what token he could possibly be referring to, is like using a fax machine and calling it the internet. It mimics the form, but not the function. Fast? Sure. Revolutionary? Only if you've never used Wi-Fi." Then he literally goes and asks Grok, yes, Grok, what is a bridge currency, and can a private token be one at scale? I mean, come on. This is absolutely hilarious coming from someone who works at Swift, which, let's be real, is essentially a private network that the US used as a financial weapon for decades. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think this has anything to do with the fact that Swift is losing market dominance? Could it be related to the fact that the entire world is shifting away from Swift? I mean, we all know Swift was weaponized with sanctions against Russia, and ever since then, the BRICS nations have been actively moving away from both Swift and the US dollar.
Or maybe, just maybe, does this have something to do with the fact that Swift is finally waking up to reality?
That blockchain technology, stablecoins, and distributed ledger technology are doing everything Swift does, but better? What's really funny to me is that this conversation isn't even being started by blockchain investors, or Ripple, or the XRP community. Nope, this is coming directly from Swift's Chief Innovation Officer. They're the ones bringing it up. Let me take you back to June. Ripple's CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, made a bold prediction. He said XRP could capture 14% of Swift's global volume. That's right, he's betting big on XRP's role in the future of cross-border payments. He believes the token could capture 14% of the volume that Swift handles within the next 5 years. Here's what he said. There are two parts to Swift today: messaging and liquidity. Liquidity is owned by the banks. I think less about the messaging and more about liquidity. If you're driving all the liquidity, it is good for XRP. So I'll say 5 years, 14%. Now, I know you've probably seen this clip before. We've all heard it multiple times. But here's where it gets really interesting. Around the same time Brad made that prediction, something happened. In July of this year, Swift's cross-border payment network saw its transaction volume drop by 15%. Let that sink in. 15%. And guess what else happened? XRP's on-chain transaction volume jumped sharply during the same period. Now, do I think these two things are directly correlated? Not necessarily. I think what we're really seeing is growing adoption around XRP, especially with the EVM sidechain and all the incredible announcements coming out lately. But the main thing we need to focus on here is Swift's declining transaction volume. And there are a few key reasons behind this decline. Number 1, cost and efficiency challenges. So let's talk about why Swift is struggling.
They're still depending on traditional interbank settlements that take, get this, 1 to 3 business days for cross-border payments. We're talking about days here, not seconds. And on top of that, the fees are significantly higher. In today's world of instant digital payments, SWIFT's lagging efficiency is becoming more and more obvious. It's like watching someone try to compete in a Formula One race with a horse and buggy. But there's more. The first half of 2025 brought global economic uncertainty, changes in monetary policy, heightened geopolitical tensions. All of this has eroded confidence in traditional cross-border payments. Businesses and individuals are looking for better alternatives. And then there's the third factor, rising competition. Innovative cross-border payment solutions like RippleNet and Visa B2B Connect are coming online and gaining traction. Small and mid-sized institutions are flocking to these lower-cost alternatives. So when you put it all together, yeah, it's crystal clear. SWIFT is losing dominance. And here's the thing, SWIFT knows it. They're concerned. Actually, scratch that. They're very focused on what's happening in crypto. And they have to be. Because at this point in the game, and I've said this many times before, it's simple. Adopt, innovate, or die. That's why SWIFT just announced they're tapping into blockchain technology. They finally made the shift because they realized they had no choice. If they didn't adapt, they would have died. Actually, let me rephrase that. They are dying. They just lost 15% of their transaction volume. And this is only going to continue because every nation outside the US is starting to realize that SWIFT has been weaponized by the United States. Now, let's circle back to that comment from SWIFT's Chief Innovation Officer, because this is really interesting. He's calling XRP essentially a private token. Well, Panos Mekras, who's the co-founder of Anados Finance on the XRP ledger, had the perfect response. He said, "Tom is absolutely right." And you know what? I agree. He is right about one thing. A private token can never be a bridge currency or used as a payment or settlement asset. Never. Neither can a private permissioned network like the one SWIFT is trying to build. But here's where Tom gets it wrong. A decentralized, permissionless technology like the XRP ledger and a global public digital currency like XRP, well, that's a completely different story. SWIFT is built on outdated rails, scrambling to play catch-up with pilots and experiments. Meanwhile, XRP has been settling transactions non-stop in 3 seconds for over a decade. Let me repeat that, over a decade. It's honestly a shame that SWIFT's centralized sandbox can't compete with a global, open, decentralized network. And this is 100% accurate, right? If you look at the moves SWIFT has made over the last few years, they've been constantly scrambling to do something, anything, with blockchain. And almost every single move they've made, it's failed. Remember when SWIFT wanted to create their own private token? They literally tried to create an XRP alternative. And guess what? Do you hear about that token today? Number. Because it failed spectacularly. It was a walled garden. And now, SWIFT is creating yet another walled garden with this recent pilot they're pushing. But here's what's really funny about all of this. This criticism is coming directly from SWIFT, saying, oh, calling a private token a bridge currency. But there's no other currency in this entire space that's actually called a bridge currency except XRP. Sure, XLM has had that title tossed around a few times, but the main one we're talking about here is XRP. There's no question about it. And a lot of people in the XRP community are calling this out. For example, VET_X0 pointed out, XRP is not a private token. It's publicly traded on many centralized and decentralized exchanges, including the XRP ledger, a public and permissionless network.
No wonder SWIFT is being replaced with this level of research in 2025.
And get this, the Chief Innovation Officer even goes and asks Grok what a bridge currency is. He literally has to ask an AI to explain the concept he's criticizing. You cannot make this up, folks. This is SWIFT, the global interbank messaging network. That's who we're dealing with here. Yeah, this is the level of intelligence we're seeing at SWIFT. And honestly, no wonder they're stuck using antiquated rails and the same outdated technology they've been relying on for decades. This is exactly why the future of finance isn't going to be built on those same old rails. Times are changing. We can see it happening right in front of us. But here's the main question I keep asking myself. Is this just a distraction tactic? Are they taking a shot to see if retail investors will read this and panic? To get people thinking, oh, this is coming from Swift directly. They're telling us XRP is basically useless. Maybe I should sell. Is that what they're trying to do here? Because here's what we already know. Swift and Ripple actually have the same partners. They're connected through multiple initiatives. Take Thunes, for example. Back in September, Thunes announced they're empowering banks to deliver fast cross-border payments to bank accounts via existing Swift connectivity. This was September 29th, and guess what happened just before that? On September 2nd, Thunes announced they're expanding their global partnership with Ripple to transform cross-border payments. So I really have to wonder, what's the real motive behind this comment from Swift's Chief Innovation Officer? And remember, Swift and Ripple are also connected through Volatile. Their platform literally says, process Swift GPI, Ripple, blockchain, digital currencies, and more, all from a single modern platform. Cross-border payment solutions from Volatile.
These two entities are connected through so many initiatives. Don't forget, the BIS's CPMI group includes both Swift and Ripple. I genuinely feel like there are a lot of diversion tactics being pushed toward the retail sector right now. It feels like psychological warfare, making us think that XRP won't be adopted, won't be utilized, that Swift will never tap into Ripple, that Swift will never consider XRP. I just feel like there's a massive diversion happening here. But you know what? Anderson made a really good point. He said, I've said this before, the only reason they mention something is because their kingdom is threatened by it. Otherwise, they would simply ignore it. You don't spend this much energy on something if it's not a threat. Basic psychology. And he's absolutely right. Why aren't they mentioning Bitcoin? Why aren't they mentioning Ethereum? Why aren't they talking about any other cryptocurrency? They're only mentioning this private token that's supposedly a bridge currency. XRP is the only one that's constantly being mentioned. Think about that. Now, some people are saying that when he uses private and public in the same context, he might mean privately issued versus publicly issued by a central bank, or even compared to a stablecoin backed by cash and treasuries. And yeah, that could definitely be the case. He might be calling it a private token because he's saying it was issued by a private entity, since Ripple is a private company, not a public government entity. That could be what he means, but I don't know, man. This whole thing just feels strange, coming from someone as prominent as Tom at Swift. This is the Chief Innovation Officer we're talking about. It's crazy to see this kind of commentary. But let's remember something important. Who are the main players behind Swift? It's all banks. Over 11,000 banks worldwide. And here's what I find really funny. When you think about what Swift is trying to do with blockchain, they essentially want to create a private network. Another walled garden. Now, let's talk about what BlackRock has told us. Big shout out to Subjective Views for catching this. There are two video clips that got posted back in March of this year. This is Justin, BlackRock's head of digital assets, and Robbie Mitchnick. And listen to what they said. The direction of travel and focus for traditional finance firms are public blockchains. That's right. No more private initiatives created by names like Swift just to hold dominance and continue squeezing the market for every dollar possible. This is huge.
Financial institutions' efforts on private blockchains in the past, and maybe sort of the shift to public blockchains, the regulatory political temperature that has kind of been changing in recent years to kind of lead to that.
Yeah, well, I think the verdict is in on the private blockchains, and it's not good. That was obviously where a lot of the TradFi exploration in this space occurred in the early years in particular, that was really all the banks and some of the other TradFi institutions had comfort with. But the track record is what it is, and it reflects the fact that there's been very, very de minimis actual adoption in an economic, commercial way at scale of any of these private blockchain projects. And I think, in hindsight, at least, that makes sense in terms of the curbing of the value prop of blockchain's potential that a private blockchain represents. And so public blockchains are increasingly the focus, even for TradFi firms, maybe not at all yet, but certainly that's the direction of travel. And we've seen obviously encouraging regulatory guidance over the last couple of weeks that help support the notion that this is now suitable territory for even banks in the US to engage in.
Now, here's where it gets even better. You just heard it from BlackRock. Now hear it from the head of digital assets at Standard Chartered. He said, the majority of activity has been in public blockchains, and private blockchains have not seen the successes we were hoping for. And why is that? Because they're walled gardens. They're closed-off systems that people simply don't want to use. There's no trust tied to these private networks whatsoever.
So public blockchains, as a bank, we've taken a stance that we believe that digital assets in their entirety are going to be there for the foreseeable future, if not permanent part of the fabric of financial services. So obviously, public blockchains are something that have been burgeoning, and that's where the volume is and activity is. And as correctly pointed out by Robbie earlier, that majority of the activity has been in public blockchains, and private blockchains have not seen the successes we were hoping for about 6-7 years ago. For us, the main driver has always been commercial activity. So if there's client demand, we perform our duty to perform the services and offer the products that the clients need. And the need of the hour over the past year and a half, 2 years, has been a regulated GSIB or a global systemically important bank to step in and provide crypto custody for a start, and then other digital asset services that are on public blockchain. So from Standard Chartered Bank's point of view, the amount of work that's gone into enabling a public blockchain infrastructure with our partners and our vendors has been immense from a risk point of view, technology point of view, assurance and governance point of view. And I think that's going to be the same across all organizations, much like what BlackRock may have done, or other banking financial institutions, other asset managers have gone through in adopting public blockchains.
This is exactly why I keep telling everyone, stop focusing on what Swift and these big private entities are doing. They are not going to see the success that public blockchains are seeing, period. And this is also why, when it comes to the XRP ledger and XRP, it will always have the upper hand over names like Swift or any of these big banks trying to create private initiatives. Let me break something down for you. Everyone always wants to say Swift is failing because of inefficiencies. Oh, it's the inefficiencies. But that's not the real reason. Swift has been failing globally because nations are tired of using a centralized system that's essentially controlled by the United States. They're done being subject to financial weapons. That's it. It's the #1 reason we've been seeing such significant moves against the US dollar. Even the BRICS nations have been creating their own currencies and exploring blockchain solutions. Think about it. Who wants to use something you can be cut off from at any moment? The main reason we're witnessing increased adoption of blockchain is exactly that. These nations are tired of US control. They've used the dollar, they've used Swift, and now they're looking for alternatives. So here we have Swift, the same network that's a private system predominantly controlled by the US, calling XRP a private token. They're saying it's going to fail, that it's not a real bridge currency, that it's mimicking the form but not the function. This is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And here's what really speaks volumes. This doesn't actually say anything about XRP being a bridge currency or XRP's functionality. What this really speaks to is Swift's lack of knowledge. It shows how uneducated these employees at Swift are about crypto.
It shows the education level of these individuals, that they're not doing proper research before making posts like this.
But again, I have to question, is this a distraction? Is this designed to get us second-guessing ourselves? To make us wonder, is XRP really the one? Are they trying to replace XRP with something else? I keep going back to what Anderson said. They are terrified of this. They are threatened by XRP. They feel so threatened by XRP that they have to mention it on X. They have to talk about it. They have to take shots at it. It reminds me of Bitcoin maximalists constantly talking about Ripple and XRP. But this is on a much larger scale, because this is SWIFT, the largest global payment network. Why do they even need to talk about XRP? They're doing well, right? It's comical. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content.